we'll start with South Africa versus Italy, because a
Mm.
lot of people had Italy getting out of this group stage. Italy ranked 16th in the world, Italy's fourth World Cup. They've made it to the quarterfinals twice before, and most recently in 2019. So a lot of people had this Italian side getting through. South Africa today needed the win, and in a crazy 3-2 defeat over Italy with a game-winning goal in extra time, they
Mhm.
managed to pull off not only their first ever World Cup win, but they also managed to pull off their first round of 16 matchup, which is insane. Like when you think about all the history that this
Mhm.
South African side just made in one day, in one game, is crazy, crazy, crazy. And I'm so happy for them and so happy for their fans.
Absolutely. And I mean, first of all, just to quick mention Italy, they put up a fight too. It was very back and forth.
Yeah, it was.
Caruso scores the brace. Credit to her. She was fabulous out there. But the headline here is 100% just this glory, this joy, this incredible moment that South Africa produced. And something that really stuck with me that I really loved about this was after the match, and their captain was ecstatic, and she was basically saying, all of us women have gone through hardships to get here. We've faced all the odds, and this win is for every single woman in the world that has ever wanted to be on the World Cup stage.
I
It
love
was
that.
so it was like a chilling moment, because it wasn't even just people back home, but it was like for all of the underdogs out there, for all of the people that didn't make it, this is for you. And just this team, this sense of joy and empowering emotion, that was very special to witness too.
Yeah, you talk about post-game moments. I felt that way watching their manager kind of give her feedback. You could see her excitement through
Mm-hmm.
her. You could hear it through her words, saying that, this team defied all odds and they made history winning their first game, but also now getting into the knockout stage. And she said, quote unquote, it was freaking awesome. So I love to see that from a manager. Every single person who was representing that South African side had a smile from ear to ear, and you love to see it. Another thing I love about this side is just the vibes that they're bringing to this Women's World Cup, how much they're singing, how much they're dancing on and off the pitch. You see these locker room videos. You see how they're warming up and getting ready for the game. These are the vibes that I love to see in football, because it brings so much happiness, so much joy, so much culture to the game. And I just am so excited to see these South African women bring that into the knockout stage. And I'm just very proud of them, because what an accomplishment it is to do what they did all in one game. And like we keep saying, the odds were against them and they stayed true to who they are at the core. They had fun today. Their chemistry was incredible on the second and third goal that South Africa had, because that first goal was an own goal. We'll talk about that in a second.
Mm-hmm.
But the second and third goal that they had, the passing, the combination play, finding players' feet, finding the lane, I was so impressed with them. And we mentioned this on a previous episode, how they did win. They're African champions. They won in 2022. So they
Mm-hmm.
were entering this Women's World Cup to show the world that they are capable to contend on the world stage, on the biggest stage of them all. They did exactly that. So happy for them. To all the South African fans who might be watching this and listening to this, we're so excited for you
Mm-hmm.
and can't wait to see what happens now in the round of 16.
Absolutely. It's just part of this storyline that we've been adding to every single episode, of these nations who maybe people didn't expect to do as well, coming up and making their mark on the world, on their mark on the game. It's so cool. You mentioned, Caroline, some of their goals. I loved watching their third goal in particular. Of course, right at the end, the emotion,
Yep.
but the quick passes, I think the awareness of where their players were was fantastic. And the culture, like you said, the culture that they bring to this tournament, to the pitch, was fabulous. And no small feat taking on a team like Italy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Italy have done well historically. They're, one of the bigger nations. Again, amazing. Major kudos to them. Major kudos to them. And I'm really excited to see what they're going to do next time.
I hate to bring it up, but Italy's first goal was an own goal. And I would have to say at this moment in time, probably the biggest misplay of the tournament, the biggest blooper. You hate to see any player go through this, but if you haven't seen it, definitely go watch it. A defender on Italy didn't really pick up her head when she was passing back to her goalkeeper and ended up scoring on her own net because she wasn't aware of the placement of the goalkeeper. Goalie did everything that they could to try and save the ball, but it ended up going back into the net. A nice break for South Africa, now at that point, the game being tied 1-1, but an unfortunate, extremely unfortunate, unlucky error by the Italians, and that player in particular. My heart goes out to her because I can't even imagine what that must feel like. But we talk about moments in the game. Players have missed penalties. These things happen. This is the way football works. It's not going to be every single person's day or every single team's day. And for today, South Africa on that first goal, it was a nice little lucky break for them. And then they absolutely finished off the game perfectly. It was just a really good game to watch.
It was a great game to watch. And, maybe it was this momentum that they needed to push forward, that going from, on that own goal. But the own goal, of course, heartbreaking. It's this moment where you kind of jump and your heart drops. And
yes.
You're like, oh no, like they will be replaying that moment.
I know.
Forever. I can't imagine them going to bed tonight thinking, was that maybe the pivotal turning point of the game? Who knows? It might be, it might not be. But like you said, these things happen in games, and it is what it is. We're human. We make mistakes, but it's about how you bounce back. So I really hope that this Italian team still holds their head high and moves forward from this in whatever international games they have next. But wow, something to watch, that's for sure.
I also, before we move on from this game, I want to give a shout out to South Africa's goalkeeper, Swart. I believe that's how you pronounce her last name. Italy had 7 shots on target, and I think she came up big time on a few of them, like very, very big time. So I think it's also important that we give love to the goalkeepers, because I think a lot of goalkeepers in this tournament, maybe even especially earlier on, are making these really big time saves, and they also deserve a lot of cred. I felt the same way about Jamaica's goalkeeper. We'll get into the Jamaica game here in a second, but just overall, I'm so happy for South Africa. I love the storylines of this World Cup. These, debut nations, or these teams that haven't ever got a win, or these teams that have never been to the knockout stages, are now accomplishing all the history and defying all the odds, and I'm here for it. It's early in the morning where I live, but that's like just a natural. It's like having coffee without having the coffee. You know what I mean? It wakes me up.
Oh, 100%. Injected into your veins all day, Caroline.
I know.
Again, I think this is probably going to be one of the most memorable parts of the tournament, is these amazing storylines. And I'm just so amped for how this is going to be a domino effect for women's football for the next tournament. So it's going to be huge. I think the Olympics are going to be a lot different than what people might be expecting. So stay tuned.
Oh, yeah. And now I'm just so excited for Olympic qualifications and the Olympics. I want to know how everything starts to play out. It's going to be so good.
I know.
Let's move on to Jamaica versus Brazil, 0-0. This is another team I'm so impressed with. Jamaica, the Reggae Girls. They handled their business so much in the group stage. Tough 0-0 draw against France. Won their first ever World Cup game against Panama. And then all they needed today against Brazil was a single point to move on. Now, not an easy thing to do when you're taking on Marta and company. This is one of the best footballing nations in the world. We spoke about this on one of our episodes on Kicked Back. They had one of the best build-up plays in the entire World Cup. One of the best goals, I still think, of this tournament. Just how seamless the Brazilians are and how crafty they are. Jamaica handled their business once again. So in this group stage, they got their first ever World Cup win, and now they're going into the knockout stages for the first time in their history for the Women's World Cup. And I just have to give a massive shout out to them, because they were disbanded back in 2008, lack of funding in the women's program. Cedella Marley recognized what was going on. Obviously, daughter of Bob Marley, the biggest reggae legend. She helped fundraise hundreds of thousands of dollars to restart this women's program. Jamaica then goes and qualifies for their first ever Women's World Cup in 2019. And then here they are in 2023, getting into the knockout stage. Unbelievable. Just the story of Jamaica makes me so happy, just like the story of South Africa. And to eliminate Brazil, that's a feat in itself. So the Jamaican women also riding on a super big high.
It makes you want to smile. It makes you want to dance. Like, this story just does something. And it's so amazing and so incredible in the best possible way. You know, you mentioned, Caroline, that they first time program history making it through to the next round, but they're also the first Caribbean nation to ever do that in the Women's World Cup too, which is fabulous. It's like these records are just keep adding and adding, and it's so cool to be able to witness this history. But Jamaica was also one of three nations, I believe Japan and Sweden were the other ones, who have not conceded a single goal this
Wow.
tournament. And who would have thought Jamaica would have been one of the teams that would have done that throughout the whole group stage? That's incredible. It's an attest to their defensive strength, their tightness, and their keeper as well. You know, these keepers this tournament have been fabulous. But I think that stat needs to get out into the world, because major kudos to those. These reggae girls have not let the ball in the net. They are strong. Their second game, they did it all without their linchpin, Bunny Shaw. It didn't matter that she wasn't there. Those ladies got it done. They're passionate. They have grit. They can dig in. And you could see what it meant to them on the pitch after the match today. And I also saw after the match Marta talking to Bunny Shaw saying, "You're the future, girl." And I thought that was so cool.
That is so cool, and we'll get into Marta in a second, but I love the shout that Jamaica hasn't conceded a goal, because when you think about their group stage teams, they had France and Brazil coming down at them. And massive shout out to Jamaica's goalkeeper. Brazil, 8 shots on target. If you watched that game this morning, Brazil did have their chances. Jamaica, another goalkeeper who was very, very big between the pipes for her country. So just a really, really good result. Jamaica didn't have a shot on target, but they played super defensive, obviously did what they could to stop the threat of the Brazilians coming down the pitch and what would probably be the case down their throat. And they did an excellent job of kind of denying those opportunities. And yeah, Marta, her 6th World Cup, her last World Cup, she said last week that she's going to hang up the boots. You know, I think she has the record for the most World Cup goals for on the women's side. So she's a legend in the sport, like no introduction necessary. Sad to see her go out this way, but the way the Brazilians started wasn't the way the Brazilians ended, which is what I've been saying throughout this entire Women's World Cup. It doesn't really matter how you start, it matters how you progress. And if you have a very, very good performance, now your job is to stay consistent. If you're not able to build even on the great performances and keep that consistency, you're going to get burned a little bit. And if you look at Brazil's performance today versus their very first game, it's not the same. So tough day for Brazil, tough day for Brazilian fans. Obviously, I'm a massive fan of Brazil, but I'm the happiest right now for Jamaica. What a well-deserved draw today. What a well-deserved performance in the group stage, and what a well-deserved advancement now into the knockout stage.
Oh, extremely well-deserved. And something to praise about Jamaica, too, is just their consistency on the pitch. Like you mentioned, Caroline, Brazil, I thought they were going to go all the way.
Yeah, me too.
Their first match there, it was smooth, it was slick, it was the most creative football I've seen them play in a very long time. It was very exciting. And unfortunately, it just couldn't be sustained. But Jamaica, they might not always play this impressive, beautiful football all the time, but they're consistent in what they do, and that gets them through. And that's so important, and that's what's going to take them far, hopefully, in this tournament, but moving forward as well.
Well, you don't always have to play the prettiest football. You just have to make sure it's effective and you're doing what you need to do to win the game. Of course, pretty football, as fans watching from the TV, you want to see it. But if your game plan's working and your strategy for your team is working, all you have to do is get the result. Jamaica did that. Now, what I will say is Jamaica is going to need to start scoring goals in order to keep going on. So I'm very curious to see, you know, I'd love to see a goal from Bunny Shaw. Like, I'm a big fan of hers. Yes. So I'm so excited to see what they do now in the round of 16, but conceded 0 goals. Now maybe they can start adding goals scored for to that tally and see what they do next.